All right, everyone, I want to thank our sponsor today, Organifi. You know, we talk a lot on this podcast about healing and the healing journey. Well, an integral part of that are the foods and the drinks that we consume. I know you know this. If you're like me, you know the importance of eating healthy, but you don't always have the time or the willpower to cook with all the colors of the rainbow. Organifi's superfood blends make it easy and enjoyable to add more variety and nutrition to your day. These are delicious organic powders that you can add to water or milk, stir and drink. It literally takes 30 seconds. It is that simple. A couple weeks ago, I was right about to start a green juice fast, a kind of a short mini fast. And I kid you not, the night before, Organifi reached out to me about sponsoring this podcast. And I will tell you that I was thrilled because this is aligned with what I'm doing. I'm familiar with Organifi. I've used them in the past before. I want to be able to bring to you quality products and things that are going to promote a healthy lifestyle. Organifi green juice is the one I use. It's the one I use every morning so that I know right away I'm starting the day on a healthy note. It's loaded with vitamins, loaded with minerals, and essential antioxidants. As a listener of the Trauma Therapist podcast, you can get 21% off any item by going to Organifi.com/trauma and use the code trauma. Once again, to get 21% off any item, go to Organifi, that's Organifi.com/trauma and use the code trauma. All right, everyone, I want to thank our sponsor today, Organifi. You know, we talk a lot on this podcast about healing and the healing journey. Well, an integral part of that are the foods and the drinks that we consume. I know you know this. If you're like me, you know the importance of eating healthy, but you don't always have the time or the willpower to cook with all the colors of the rainbow. Organifi's superfood blends make it easy and enjoyable to add more variety and nutrition to your day. These are delicious organic powders that you can add to water or milk, stir and drink. It literally takes 30 seconds. It is that simple. A couple weeks ago, I was right about to start a green juice fast, a kind of a short mini fast. And I kid you not, the night before, Organifi reached out to me about sponsoring this podcast. And I will tell you that I was thrilled because this is aligned with what I'm doing. I'm familiar with Organifi. I've used them in the past before. I want to be able to bring to you quality products and things that are going to promote a healthy lifestyle. Organifi green juice is the one I use. It's the one I use every morning so that I know right away I'm starting the day on a healthy note. It's loaded with vitamins, loaded with minerals, and essential antioxidants. As a listener of the Trauma Therapist podcast, you can get 21% off any item by going to Organifi.com/trauma and use the code trauma. Once again, to get 21% off any item, go to Organifi, that's Organifi.com/trauma and use the code trauma. Trauma Therapist Podcast, episode 551. All right, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to raise the awareness of trauma and to support and inspire new trauma therapists just starting out on the trauma-informed journey. I do that with my membership community, Trauma Therapist 2.0, my online courses and workshops, and the Trauma Therapist newsletter. If you're a therapist of any kind and you work with individuals who've been impacted by trauma, I invite you to head on over to my website at thetraumatherapistproject.com. That's thetraumatherapistproject.com. All right, let's get started. All right, so 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. Guy McPherson here, and I am very excited to have as my guest today, Uwe Dockhorn. Uwe, welcome.
Wow, it's a pleasure being here with you, Guy.
All right. Thanks so much. So Uwe is known as the Lifestyle Liberator. He's delivered over 15,000 two-hour sessions worldwide in the last 12 years. Uwe is the founder of the AIM system. That's AIM. It's a simple three-step life-changing experience for in-demand professionals and their spouses. They're what he calls the VIPs, the very important partners. He supports them to get back their family mojo, double their financial security, and live in abundance in all areas of their life without feeling guilty or constantly questioning themselves. Uwe believes in liberating lifestyles with higher standards and internal certainty that shows up in your business, financially, and emotionally in your relationships. All right, Uwe. So first of all, so I was on your podcast a while back. You graciously invited me on, and that's how we met. And we'll talk about your podcast, but you really struck me because your podcast is super short. It's like what, 8 minutes, but it's packed. I mean, you have this style and this energy about you, and I wanted to bring you on here to share that with my listeners. So welcome.
I'm happy to be here.
All right. You. So before we get going, Uwe, where are you from originally, and where are you currently?
Well, originally I'm born in Germany, and also currently I'm in Germany. But of course I work since more than 12 years internationally, and North America, Australia, and the English-speaking world, so to speak, are my clients all over the world. And I'm really enjoying that.
Okay. So let's kind of talk about your journey since. How did you get to where you are now? What drove this interest?
Well, I must say that I really had kind of like a life before this life, so to speak. So it really goes back to, the early days. So as you know, and we talked about this on my podcast, I was sexually abused at the age of 10, and I never told anybody. So it really starts there, I guess. And and over the years growing up with my family, which I really loved, it was kind of like, there was always something inside of me that I felt that was missing. But I had no clue because I couldn't talk about this experience. And so there was always kind of like something missing inside of me. And so as I grew up, you just overcompensate things as you do. And but it's not something that you see as something serious. But over time, it became more serious because I was addicted to alcohol. I even took drugs and really tried to fill something inside of me that I've never thought that I would miss something. But there was this hole inside of me that I tried to compensate. And I really lost everything. I lost getting in touch with friends, my
because
job.
of your addiction?
Yes, because of the addiction. And I lost everything. So, and when I was 28, I found myself standing at the edge of a bridge. And I was ready to let go. And, it's, it was this crystal clear winter night. And it was bitterly cold as I was standing there. And I was watching the stars, and I even could see my breath. And as I was breathing in and out, and in that moment, I was kind of like, up to this point, I really believed I cannot feel anything. And the truth was, I couldn't feel anything because I was numb. And so when I was standing there, I did let go. And in that very moment, something happened that, I saw this tiny little light inside of me. And then I felt it for the very first time. Since my father had died 5 years before that, I felt something. And this drew me back from jumping. So, and I realized something in that moment when I was standing there. I just started to cry for a very long time, because I didn't cry after my dad died. I just started to cry for minutes, for I think, I don't know, half an hour or so, and realizing that there is something else there. But only after I did let go, I realized that I could feel that there is something else.
When you say let go, you don't mean you obviously let go when you jumped off the
I
bridge.
was, yeah.
You let go of what? These constrictions, these mental chains, if you will, these conceptions, what?
No, this came later, but I mean, in that very moment, I literally leaned forward and was able to let go. But it really kind of like in that second, in that split second, you know, I saw this tiny little light and I felt something. And this feeling drew me back. So there was nothing else. It was pitch black, kind of like really a tunnel vision. And I really was focused on, okay, this is the end.
Mm.
So, and this was the turning point in my life when I was 28. And I promised myself, something in that night, that I will live a life with all the emotions there are in this. I don't want to use drugs in it or to be dependent on anything. And this really started my journey into personal development, and 20 years later to the lifestyle liberator I'm today. So, but there's more to that, because from that experience that I lived through that, in that moment, I realized that letting go is only 50% of the equation. And letting in is the other side of the equation. So it's kind of like a two-part mechanism inside of us. Letting go and letting in, it's like a two-part mechanism that we have, but we're not aware of. And only after I did let go, I realized, oh, there's something else. And this realization just dawned on me over the years, and until I really could understand it and exercises in a way that now I help my clients to learn this, to help really, as you in a similar way, I guess, with your clients do with trauma, help them with trauma or any extraordinary incident they experienced in the past. Like me, I was believing I cannot feel, just really truly believing I cannot feel. And there are thousands of other beliefs like that. I'm not good enough, I don't belong, or whatever it is. And what I do is really helping my clients to get to that. I call this the core elephant, so to speak. I call this the elephant thinking effect. So, and it's kind of like something that you experienced and you reacted, or first, you had this extraordinary incident, and then, as a reaction to it, you programmed yourself with something like, I can't feel, I don't belong, or whatever it is. And that is just the beginning of, a sequence of other elephant thinkings that evolve into patterns, and these patterns of our life evolve into our behavior.
Well, let me interrupt, if I may, for a second here. So you were standing on that bridge. You said you were 28. So prior to that time, Uwe, did you said you were using drugs and alcohol, not feeling. Was there a sense or realization that what had happened to you, the abuse that happened to you, that had impacted you at all? When did that awareness come about?
Good point. So that happened afterwards. So that realization about my that I was sexually abducted is not abducted, abused, was that came after, I did let go and obviously didn't jump, because I went into therapy, and I was there for 3 months in therapy, and we did a special, an intensive with role plays, and so there were kind of like the whole group. I think it was 30 other people also in this group, and we did role plays, and one of the ladies was raped, and we had the task to turn our faces towards the wall. We were all sitting in a circle around her in the center, where she was laying on cushions and everything, and so we had to turn ourselves around and we had to moan. And I just get the shivers again, because in that moment when I heard that moaning, I wanted to throw up.
Wow.
I ran out of this circle, up, because it was in the cellar, up into the garden, and just throw up. So, and this was the moment I realized what's going on here. This was the first time I really realized there's something else. And that started my whole additional process of dealing with what happened, talking about it, and actually starting to do therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Because until that point, kind of like, what does it mean to do therapy? So I don't know. So I have problems with feeling stuff, and still after the effect, but I could feel I was willingly going to support myself, to take care of myself in that moment. But this is how the story really started.
Wow. Before we kind of move on here, what was the purpose of the moaning?
To induce an environment so that she could relive
Wow.
these moments, but it had an effect directly on me.
I'm sure it did, and other people too.
Unconsciously.
That just sounds very intense. Okay. So you're in a sense, there seem to be almost these, with us all, many threads that brought you here to where you are now and what you're doing now. How has that experience and how you've moved through that, how has that informed the work you're doing now? All right. I don't know if you follow me on Instagram or not, but when I do interviews, I usually do 2 interviews a week. I conduct 2 interviews a week. And usually I get so excited, I get so pumped up after these interviews because I get to talk to incredible people. And what I usually do is I go on Instagram and I talk about it. I want to share that excitement. Usually there's about a 2-month turnaround on my podcast, which means that they don't go live for a couple of months. And I have a problem with that because I want to share it. I get so excited about these things. So what I've done is I've created a membership called Trauma Therapist Plus, and it allows people for $5 a month to access these episodes about 2 months before they get published to the public. And you can also listen ad-free, which is really cool. So if you're interested in that, if you're interested in listening to episodes before they get released to the general public and also listening ad-free, check it out. You can access it by going to Apple Podcasts and just clicking on any of the episodes that has a plus, Plus, before it. It's exciting. I'm excited about it, and you'll also help support the podcast. Thank you so much for being a listener. I really appreciate it. Take care.
No, absolutely. So it helps me up until today. So it's because of this very, well, let's say, intensive, extraordinary experience, and also supporting myself in, I want to feel everything as life is, kind of like opening up to all the emotions there are, no matter what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Because of that mantra also, it's kind of like when I finally started out as a coach, it helped me enormously, because I can feel if someone is, even if it's on Zoom, of course I started out on as we did on Skype very early on, online, but also offline. But I always could sense and have that internal reaction to if something feels right, feels true when I'm with someone together. So that always helped me, kind of like part of my superpower. I don't know how I would describe it. It's I can feel if someone is at a moment internally reflecting, experiencing at the core of his problem or their problems. So if they're not there, because I'm German, I'm thorough, I just keep asking questions. And that's what I do as a systemic coach. So I really want to get there so they can feel and perceive as I did. Only, after I did let go, I was able to feel and perceive something else that was there.
Right.
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 So that helped me a lot to really be there in the moment and to exercise what I do.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. And I love what you're saying about your superpower is this ability to like trust yourself and trust your instincts and trust your guts, such that you can feel and sense if someone is in the essence of what their problem, their crossroads, in a sense. That's pretty cool.
Yes, I
That's
believe
that's
so.
that's really cool. So
Yeah.
you said to yourself, so what, how did this unfold? You said to yourself, I want to work with people to help them do what? How did you get to that point where you created this business?
Well, it just was slowly, really. So, it's kind of like 14 years ago. It wasn't earlier. So there was a period of time where I just worked, and I was still in a lifestyle business, nightlife business, still in contact with my former life, but not using drugs or alcohol any longer. But then I became regional manager of an agency, and we were kind of like in the early 2000s. So we had this. It was called night agents. We just went out with, and in a time where smartphones didn't exist, we went into the club scene in Berlin, and with these little cybershot cameras, and we made pictures, polarizing pictures, of course. We went in all these clubs exist, and then we uploaded them at night, and then people started to commenting on them. So, and I was the manager to, our business model was to do advertisement for these clubs. And so therefore they got the pictures and everything. So but at one point, the spreadsheets became bigger and bigger, and the mother company kind of like it dawned on me. So I was beginning in my 40s. So I was like, yeah, I think if I don't switch or find something that is still missing inside of me, finding really like my true purpose, why am I here? I was still asking myself, who am I, why am I here, and what do I love to do? So I had this strong understanding of myself and support in a way, but that kind of like also tipped me off to say, okay. And I went for a sabbatical, and was in taking up different programs, and I landed in a systemic coaching program. So where they also train to be a trainer, but also systemic coaching. And there we had coaches, and they were fantastic. They're doing stuff with us I've never experienced before. So that was the first time I was encountering coaches and what they do. And I loved it. And I essentially, really what resonated the most with me was helping people to discover their perceptions, to really guide them through so they can find what's really going on. And this really resonated with me. And it was so strong. But at the end of the program, I decided not to work as a systemic coach because I had too much respect of helping other people to find their perception, to find their way and their truth. And so I started out as a trainer, and I did things like visual thinking, bringing that into the German market, translated from the English at that time already, working with project management teams with the military in Germany and corporate and so on. It was quite successful, but there was one piece always missing. You know, when you work with a group, it's that piece. So at the end of the day, they all have to jump over that so-called wall, training wall. Everybody has to be over there, and then your training was successful. And there were some, you know, they needed some more attention than others, and I always resented that. I felt like, yeah, I wished I had more time for them. So, and then lucky me, one of my former coaches in my program where I was, you know, reached out to me and said, hey, Uwe, why don't you join us here? I'm getting a job as a director of this academy, and I want you there. You have background in marketing. Come in. And so I finally found myself in a position one-on-one, because I had all the first conversations. Everybody, 360 degrees of people were coming in daily. And I had these one-on-one conversations, and I was really stunned that one simple question, the answer to one simple question. So what are your goals? So, you know, and only 15% had an idea, and they were really all through the spectrum. Doesn't matter if they were academics or just in between jobs. No, yeah, only 15% had that. So I used, you know, of course, my learned coaching skills to ask them questions. I used also something from visual thinking. On one sheet, I gave them kind of like something into their hands, so they had the next 5 year strategy where they want to go. And having that, I could say, okay, so this is where you want to go, and how can we help you to get there? So therefore, my conversion rates as also kind of like the first sales consultant for the academy were skyrocketing. So I had so much success, the people loved it. So increasing profits in the first year for more than 30%.
Wow.
And it really kind of like, you know, doing this every day day after day, 8 people, 12 people, and these conversations, these initial conversations, they got even longer. They started out as 20-minute talks, conversations, and then they became 40 minutes and even longer. And again, it was winter again, but this time I was inside and it was warm inside. And it really dawned on me. And I was just sitting there at the end of such a day. I was really fulfilled with what I've done. And I was just like, Uwe, what are you doing here? You're using coaching skills, you're using coaching questions. Why don't you just step into the role and identity of a coach? And goosebump shower again, click in that moment. It just fell all into place. And I was there. And I knew, that's me. That's who I am. That's what I love to do. And that's why I'm here. So I had the answers to my 3 questions. And this really kickstarted me to where I'm in today.
Let me just remind everyone that I'm speaking with Uwe Dockhorn. His website is uwedockhorn.com. That's UWEDOCKHORN.com. So, all right, we're kind of winding down here, but I want to ask you some stuff. So who would you say is your ideal client in a sense?
Mhm. So I'm specialized. I started out working with business owners, entrepreneurs, and executives. It developed to C-suite executives, to medical professionals, and at one point, I realized that there's a dangerous dynamic shift in the relationships of these in-demand professionals and these high achiever families, because I typically started out with coaching the provider, so to speak, of the family. And then, the spouses said, oh, I love what you do with my husband, or spouse, I would like to be that you are my coach too. And I said, yes, of course, lucky me. So, but then I realized also that there's this imbalance in their relationship. So the providers up here, and very often, too often, the spouse at home feels kind of like abandoned, asking themselves, what about me? What's the next step in my career? And so, they don't see this consciously, but it's there, it's growing, and they cannot grab it. So, and that's what was the point where I started to realize, oh, I can tap and help them. And this is what differentiates me out also from other systemic coaches. So, because I coach them, I'm not a family counselor, I coach them separately. And I help them to gain and often regain their independence within their relationship, and then regularly bring them together. And they love these sessions. These are goosebump sessions times 10, because they finally can level up to each other again with a deeper connection to each other, and really getting to that eye-to-eye respectful, intimate relationship that they so much love. And so this is really the culmination of over the years. And this is what I love to do now, and helping get back their family mojo and even double their financial security. And that means that typically, because these spouses at home, they don't trust themselves enough to be even successful or to run their own business, sometimes because they feel guilty or questioning themselves, also against their kids, depending on how old the kids are. They don't believe that they are up there for, bringing in income. So that's kind of like where I also come in and help them to gain their trust and find something so they can participate in bringing in additional money to the family, therefore doubling the financial security for the whole family. So that's also coming back to that eye-to-eye relationship again. So they don't feel like, yeah, I'm feeling behind. I don't want that.
Right. Awesome. All right. So as we kind of wind down here quickly, you have a podcast. Talk a little bit about your podcast.
Yeah, well, you should talk about the podcast. You've been a guest on it. So
I have. Yeah.
It's Lift Off with Energizing Results, and
Lift Off with Energizing
Lift
Results.
Off
Okay.
with Energizing Results, and currently recorded today's 63rd episode already.
Nice.
And it's, as I said, short and sweet format. It's 6 questions in 9 minutes. And my favorite one is at the end. As you remember, it's the question about when was the last time you experienced goosebumps with your family and why? And this is so important because it's, as the name says, lift off with energizing results. So I want to, listeners to come to the podcast and feel at the end. They got informative, insightful shares of my guests, of course, but at the end, really to end on a high note, emotional high note, having a goosebump shower. So I'm really an advocate for more goosebump showers in the world.
Nice. Well, Uwe, it was awesome talking with you today, and I really appreciate you sharing, your story and walking us through how it led you to where you are today and what you're doing today. And it's super inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasure being here today.
Awesome. All right. Take care, sir.